Hi, in this Lightboard session we're going to talk about REST Connect connectors and compare them to using HTTP to invoke an API. Now, when you have a spec, either your RAML or OpenAPI spec, aka Swagger, you want to share that so that it's discoverable and documented, and that forms part of the control plane's exchange. So out in the control plane, the capability for discovery and documentation is Exchange. So you publish your assets into Exchange and you'll have your RAML or OAS. That will be published into Exchange, and then there is a mechanism in the background which will generate a REST Connect connector. Okay, so a bit of magic mechanism. So it generates this REST Connect connector, and that asset is in Exchange, tucked away behind the definition that you've published in. So you document as usual. Now, this other asset, which is a connector, that can be used in your studio or in the Flow Designer to call the downstream API. Now, without this REST Connect connector, you can still call APIs. It's just an HTTP request, so you've got options. You could use just options, use HTTP request. So you could use the request operation from the HTTP connector, or you can use this REST Connect connector. Okay, so you're using the REST Connect connector. Why would you use this? Well, it understands the operation, so it'll give you the operation. So you'll get the operation names there, and because it's looking at that definition, if you've defined the output structure, it will tell the underlying data sense or the underlying hints in the IDE what the structure is that comes out of a given operation. So if you're doing a retrieve and it's got orders, you'll know the order structure from your RAML or OpenAPI spec, and it will populate that. So the data sense or the metadata structure, that will be populated for you. Now, if you're using HTTP request, then you would have to know the operation paths and put those in manually. So this is taken care of for you by the REST Connect, but you can still do it. So you'd have to put the URL stuff. So you can put in the path, the query parameters, the headers. Those things are all nicely tucked away into an operation with spots to put them in. So a bit more convenient there. Now the data sense, you'd have to do that manually. So you would have to load in an example or a schema. So it's a bit of double handling on what you would have already done in your RAML or your OpenAPI spec. And the final thing is the errors. The errors that come out of your REST Connect will be prefixed with the name of the API. So it's nice and easy to identify when you're getting a bad request from your orders API versus from your customer's API. Whereas when you're doing HTTP, all of the errors will be prefixed with the name of the connector, which is HTTP. So you can map them, but it's a bit of additional work. Now, why would you pick HTTP request? Well, there are more advanced configuration options that you can do. So things like timeouts and additional lower level HTTP things. But as far as the end result, you're producing a call to an HTTP endpoint, and that's what's needed to invoke a downstream API. So both are options. They've both got their pros and cons. Convenience versus power.